Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do a short video on cutting your fabric. Especially if you're a first timer, this can be really intimidating. So I've straightened my fabric, and that just means I hung it from the salvages to make sure it was nice and flat at the bottom. Didn't have any pulling, kind of like you see in pants that are too tight or too loose. And you can see when I laid it back down that there's a little bit of extra fabric on this side. So I'm going to cut that off and straighten it before I cut my strips out. Here's my ruler. And I'm going to get it as close to this edge as possible so I don't waste any fabric. And I'm actually going to use the 1/4 inch line that's on the very bottom of this ruler. You can see I'm pretty darn close right there. And I'm going to just check down here, make sure that we're... Okay. So you can see I've got my hand in the middle of the ruler. And I'm pressing pretty hard. You can see the whites of my fingers. And I'm using my fingertips because you get a better push with it. This, for me, hurts my elbow and my wrist. So this is much better. I'm going to open my blade, and there's some ridges right here for your finger to rest on. I'm going to actually pull my hand down a little bit so you might be able to see this better. At the bottom, I want my blade to be straight up and down, not twisted to the outside or the inside, but nice and straight up and down. I'm going to pull back a little bit and pressing pretty hard, especially when you're first cut. You want both of these to be really firm, so you're cutting all the way through the layers. And you want to press pretty hard and go fairly slowly. Now when I've reached my hand, I'm going to walk it up the ruler and keep going. I'm going to walk it up the ruler, and then I should be able to finish my cut. Before I move the ruler, I want to close my blade. These things are like surgical scalpels, and you will get cut pretty badly. I leave my ruler there to make sure I've cut all the way through this. Okay, now I want to cut 8.5 inch strips from here, and I'm going to use a second ruler. And this ruler has 1 inch marks on one side and 1/2 inch marks on the other. I know I'm going to do 8.5 inch cuts, and I'm going in the center of the edge here. That sounds kind of weird. And I'm butting the longer ruler against it. I'm also checking that this is straight up here. And I move this ruler out of the way. Again, I'm pressing pretty hard, especially like I said, if it's your first cuts. You want to press pretty hard and make sure you get all the way through the layers. I'm keeping my blade nice and straight up and down, moving my hand up. And again, before I move my ruler, I want to pull this strip out. And that one did just fine. Okay. From this 8.5 inch strip I just cut, I need 8.5 inch squares. So now I know that the salvage on fabric is usually 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch. Turn this one around. This fabric, the salvage is about 7/8 inch, so I'm just going to cut 1 inch off of this. And again, I'm kind of lining up the ruler at the top there, pushing it over to here, lining up with that salvage. But I am going to double check by laying this ruler on that line, and it looks good. Okay. So again, I move that ruler. I'm pressing pretty hard. I've opened my blade and put my finger. I've got my blade straight up and down. And now I'm just going to go slowly and cut that off. Close my blade, put it down. I've cut all the way through. Excellent. Here's my next one. One thing you might notice is that I am not using the lines that are on the cutting mat. Some of the mats, the numbers are inaccurate. So if you laid a tape measure on there, as you go up the mat, they would stop matching. Okay, here is my 8.5 inch. I'm nice and straight there. I'm nice and straight across here. Pushing down fairly hard. And there are two 8.5 inch blocks. Oops. So halfway through the video, I start getting nervous and making mistakes, so sorry about that. Lining up those, lining up that. I remember I was terrified when I made my first cut. I didn't have my hand hard enough. I'm leaving this closed. And as I was coming up, my ruler slipped to the side, and so my cut was off. Okay, there's two more. Now, if I'm lucky, remember I need 8.5 inch squares. I'm going to cheat a little bit on this last one. So 4 1/4 and 4 1/4 are 8.5. I'm lining up the line here, lining up the line down there, pushing pretty hard. Got my blade, got my finger out here. Blade is up and down, pushing pretty hard, going slowly. And now when I open this piece, I hope if I use the right side of the ruler, wouldn't it? There we go. 8.5 by 8.5. Woo! Have fun!